In the autumn of 1501, an event occurred within the Vatican's apostolic palace that would become one of the most infamous scandals in papal history, known as the Banquet of Chestnuts. This gathering has been cited for centuries as evidence of corruption at the highest levels of the Catholic Church during the Renaissance. The details come primarily from a single source, the diary of Johannes Burchard, the papal master of ceremonies whose account has sparked 500 years of historical debate. Before we examine what happened that night, we need to understand the world that made it possible. The late 15th century was a period of profound contradiction within the Catholic Church, while Renaissance culture flourished across Italy, producing masterworks of art and architecture. The papacy itself had become deeply entangled in secular politics. Popes were not merely spiritual leaders but temporal rulers controlling vast territories, commanding armies, and engaging in the same dynastic struggles as any Italian prince. Into this world stepped Rodrigo Borgia, who became Pope Alexander VI in 1492, a Spanish cardinal from the influential Borgia family. Rodrigo had already fathered several children before his election, a fact that was scandalous but not unprecedented. What distinguished Alexander VI was the openness with which he promoted his family's interests and the extent to which he used the papacy as a tool for their advancement. His children became central to his political strategy. Cesare Borgia, his second son, was made a cardinal at age 18, though he later resigned to pursue military conquest. Lucretia Borgia, his daughter, became a political pawn in her father's diplomatic schemes, married and divorced multiple times to forge advantageous alliances. The Borgias were not universally condemned in their time. Many contemporaries viewed them pragmatically as products of their age. Italian politics operated through patronage, family networks, and strategic marriages. Every powerful family engaged in similar practices. What made the Borgias exceptional was their success and the resentment it generated among rival families. By 1501, Alexander VI had consolidated significant power. Cesare commanded papal armies that were reshaping the political map of central Italy. The family's enemies were numerous, including powerful Roman noble families who had been displaced, rival Italian city-states threatened by Borgia expansion, and foreign powers concerned about their growing influence. Into this environment of intrigue and ambition came the event. Recorded by Johannes Burchard on October 30, 1501. Burchard was a German cleric who had served as papal master of ceremonies since 1484, responsible for organizing and documenting official Vatican functions. His diary, written in Latin, contains detailed accounts of ceremonies, diplomatic receptions, and daily life in the papal court. The entry for October 30th describes a private banquet held in the Vatican apartments of Cesare Borgia. According to Burchard's account, approximately 50 courtesans attended the gathering. The evening included entertainment that violated both religious propriety and social norms, involving the courtesans in activities that Burchard described with clinical detachment but unmistakable disapproval. The critical question facing historians is, how reliable is this account? Burchard was present in the Vatican and held a position that gave him access to information about papal activities. However, scholars note several important considerations. First, he wrote from the perspective of a conservative cleric who disapproved of the Borgias' behavior. Second, he was recording events in a private diary, not an official record, which means his account did not undergo the scrutiny that public documents received. Third, his description lacks certain details that would corroborate independent verification. No other contemporary source provides first-hand confirmation of Burchard's specific claims about this banquet. Several other writers mentioned Borgia scandals in general terms, but none offered detailed accounts of this particular evening. This has led some historians to question whether Burchard's description was accurate, exaggerated, or perhaps even based on rumor rather than direct observation. What we know with certainty is that the Borgias generated intense opposition. Reformist clergy throughout Europe viewed the papal court as corrupt. Political rivals in Italy spread damaging stories, some true and others fabricated. Foreign powers, particularly France and Spain, sought to undermine Borgia influence through propaganda campaigns. In this context, accounts like Burchard's served multiple purposes. They documented genuine concerns about papal conduct. They also functioned as political weapons in a broader struggle for control of the Church in Italian territories. Separating factual observation from motivated exaggeration becomes extraordinarily difficult across 5 centuries. What remains undeniable is that Alexander VI's papacy represented a crisis point for the Catholic Church, one that would contribute directly to the upheavals of the Protestant Reformation. The immediate consequences of the Banquet of Chestnuts, if it occurred as Burchard described, were surprisingly limited. No official investigation took place. No participants faced ecclesiastical punishment. The event, if it happened, was treated as a private matter within the papal household, not a public scandal requiring institutional response. This silence is itself revealing. It suggests either that such behavior was not considered extraordinarily shocking within certain circles of the Renaissance papal court, or that Alexander VI wielded sufficient power to suppress criticism. Both factors likely played a role. However, The long-term impact was profound, though it unfolded gradually. Burchard's diary remained in manuscript form for decades after his death in 1506. When portions were eventually published in the 17th century, they provided ammunition for ongoing debates about papal authority and church reform. Protestant writers seized upon accounts like the Banquet of Chestnuts as proof that the Renaissance papacy had abandoned its spiritual mission. Catholic scholars responded in various ways. Some questioned the reliability of Burchard's account, noting his personal biases and the lack of corroborating evidence. Others acknowledged problems during the Borgia papacy while arguing that isolated incidents did not invalidate the institution itself. Still others maintained that exaggerated or fabricated stories about the Borgias had been weaponized for political purposes. Modern historians approach the question with greater nuance. Most acknowledge that serious ethical problems existed during Alexander VI's papacy. The Pope openly promoted his children's interests, used church resources for family advancement, and presided over a court where secular concerns often overshadowed spiritual ones. Whether the specific events of October 30, 1501 occurred exactly as Burchard described remains uncertain, but they fit within a documented pattern of behavior. The broader significance lies not in verifying every detail but in understanding what the Borgia papacy represented. Alexander VI was neither the first nor the last Renaissance pope to prioritize political power over spiritual leadership, but his family's rise and fall became symbolic of institutional crisis within the church. The Borgias' decline came swiftly. Alexander VI died in August 1503, possibly from malaria, though poisoned rumors circulated immediately. Without their father's protection, his children's fortunes collapsed. Caesar, who had seemed poised to carve out a permanent territorial state, found himself outmaneuvered by rivals, and eventually died in obscurity in Spain in 1507. Lucretia survived longer, living until 1519 as Duchess of Ferrara, where she cultivated a reputation for piety and patronage that contrasted sharply with her earlier notoriety. The speed of their fall demonstrates the fragility of power built primarily on personal networks and papal favor, rather than legitimate institutional foundations. It also reveals how deeply the Borgias were resented and how quickly enemies moved once the opportunity arose. Within 2 decades of Alexander VI's death, Martin Luther would post his 95 Theses igniting the Protestant Reformation. While multiple factors drove this upheaval, the Borgia papacy provided reformers with powerful examples of corruption. The Banquet of Chestnuts, whether literally accurate or symbolically representative, entered Protestant polemics as evidence that Rome had betrayed Christianity's foundational principles. The Catholic Church's response, the Counter-Reformation, included significant institutional reforms precisely because figures like Alexander VI had damaged the Church's moral authority so severely. The Council of Trent imposed stricter standards for clerical behavior and papal conduct. Never again would a pope openly maintain a family in the Vatican or use the papacy so blatantly for dynastic purposes. From a scholarly perspective, the Banquet of Chestnuts remains contested territory. Historians continue debating Burchard's reliability, the event's historical accuracy, and its significance. Some view it as a documented scandal that reveals the Renaissance papacy's moral bankruptcy. Others see it as potentially exaggerated or even fabricated propaganda that nonetheless captured genuine problems within the institution. What seems clear is that whether this specific banquet occurred as described, the Borgia papacy represented a genuine crisis of legitimacy for the Catholic Church. The willingness of contemporaries to believe such stories, the speed with which they spread, and their lasting impact all indicate deep institutional problems that transcended any single event. The Borgias have fascinated observers for 5 centuries because they embody fundamental questions about power, corruption, and institutional decay. Their story asks whether any institution, no matter how sacred its claimed mission, can withstand the corrupting influence of unchecked power and dynastic ambition. The Banquet of October 30, 1501, whether historical fact or symbolic representation, continues to challenge our understanding of how religious institutions navigate the tension between spiritual ideals and worldly power. In that sense, its relevance extends far beyond Renaissance Rome, speaking to enduring questions about authority, accountability, and the price of corruption in any era.